we have a trio of esteemed panelists who will be delving into digital currencies. Governor Richard Byles, Christopher Reckord, and Tesfa Rhodes. So you may know Richard Byles. He's the governor of the Bank of Jamaica. He served in the private and public sectors in several senior management positions spanning 3 decades and is one of this generation's most accomplished corporate leaders. Before assuming the role of BOJ governor, he served as chairman of Sagicor Group Jamaica for 13 successful years. And before that, he served as president and CEO at Panjam Investments for another 13 years. I guess 13 is the magic number for Governor Byles. Will he be at BOJ for 13 as well? Let's see. Who else is our next presenter? We have Tesfa Rhodes, the head of business transformation and innovation at NCB, where he applies his experience to co-create the future state of the financial group. That's a big job. He's a solutions-oriented and results-driven professional with over 15 years of progressive leadership in the field of software engineering and IT leadership. And of course, you've met Christopher Reckord as already, CEO of T-Tech Limited. These are some great sources of knowledge for our next topic, digital currencies, advancing your digital maturity. Let's welcome them.
Well, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Governor Byles. Good afternoon, Tesfa.
Good afternoon, Chris.
Thank you very, very much for being here this evening.
Indeed.
Hope you guys had a chance to listen to the presentation before. You're going to come to it from a different perspective.
Yes.
So before I start with any of the questions that I have, I know that there's going to be some further questions there. Governor Byles, just kind of want to start off with you. If you could kind of give us an overview. You may have heard a number of the questions around Jamdex and what central bank is doing, and then afterwards I'll talk to Tesfa about the opportunities that presents, including some of probably what we heard before. But Richard, give us a little intro as to where is the BOJ taking us?
Well, CBDC or Jamdex for us here in Jamaica is really cash on your phone. That's a simple way in which I think of it. And just like you can do with telephone credit, you can send it. So you can send it to a merchant and buy. You can send it to a friend or a family member and pay them. So it can work remotely. It's not like cash where you have to physically deliver it. But in every other way, it is like cash. And it will become legal tender in Jamaica. There's no charge for getting it, and there's no charge for spending it. So again, it's just like cash.
Right.
You go to a bank and say, give me $100, you're going to get 100, not 99, you get 100. And if you spend it and the item costs $100, you're going to get $100 worth when you pay by CBDC. So it's just like cash in that sense. You have to open a bank account for it, but the bank account start at very low levels, meaning each commercial bank can set the standards that they require for you to open a CBDC account. And so long as it is not a big business that you're going to run through it, the requirements are likely to be quite simple. Photo ID and a piece of government identification. A photo and a piece of government identification. Mm-hmm. And you can join a bank. So what I like about CBDC, Chris, is that it gives the people who are outside of the formal banking community a reason to be in the banking community. So they can join a bank. And the reason is, here is something that is worthwhile. It is cash that it's on your phones, people can't steal it from you. Even if you lose your phone, you still have your cash because you have all kind of security measures to get in there. You can pay remotely. Your auntie can stay in Catadupa and get her remittance from Money Express or MoneyGram. She don't have to come to town. She don't have to go to somewhere physical. She can get it from her nephew. So that kind of remote ability to pay is a big plus and a big incentive for people to want to come into the formal financial network.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that high level overview. So Tesfa, what's your role in all of this? How do you know how does National Commercial Bank? I mean, we heard one of your subsidiaries a
Yes.
while ago, but what's in it for you? And
Yes.
anyway, and after you talk about what's in it for you, I don't want you to
Sure.
share with our several hundred guests that we have online.
Understood.
What's in it for them? You know.
All right. Yeah. So NCB was fortunate enough to be invited to participate in the pilot with the BOJ to deliver CBDC Jamdex to the markets. Right. I would have provided the technical leadership in getting things done, but we see digital currencies, digital payments as being part of the go forward as a society, as part of general digital maturity and creating digital economies. And that means identifying current use cases. We've spoken earlier about the unbanked and the role that digital currencies can play in that, Jamdex in particular, but also looking at broader use cases like commerce, merchant services. These are all things that we believe would be a critical part of our future. And NCB is laying the foundation for making that happen, creating the rails. Yes, what we see now as the face of Link in distributing or making CBDC accessible via their wallet is commendable. NCB core or core business provides the rail that allows that to happen. So it's a symbiotic relationship that we currently enjoy at this point.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. So, of course, we heard some of the questions and some very interesting questions coming out of the panels before. And so the NCB, the organization that's providing the Link wallet, that seems to be, is that different, Governor Byles, from the CBDC wallet for Jamdex, or is this just one of the avenues?
So, Chris, let me start by giving NCB a big up. They stepped forward and they have worked very hard in the trenches to bring this, along with ourselves, this innovation to the market. And so they really deserve praise for that. So NCB has a bigger plan than just CBDC. They have a wallet, Link. And I think Tesfa is better placed to tell you about that. But I presume that Jamdex will be one of the means of payment that will sit in a wallet that Tesfa has planned for you.
Okay. All right. That's all?
Yeah, so that's absolutely correct. And as my colleague and friend John Matthew would have mentioned before, the Link wallet really is a multi-currency wallet. So the expectation is that there is a tool that you'd have on your device that enables the user to house not just CBDC, Jamdex, but other digitized or tokenized versions of payment instruments. So using your credit card or even your debit card, as was explained previously. And to the extent that the intention is to revolutionize payment and commerce, there might be other embedded capabilities within the wallet solution outside of just maintaining the payment instrument or the currency rather. So yes,
Okay.
there's a broader play at foot here.
Yeah. So the BOJ has been doing a good job online. I've followed its various social media channels, educating and informing about the Jamdex in general. So as I've started telling people about this and inviting people to this presentation, people ask me questions. Okay, Chris, I'm very interested. I want to learn more about it. I see the NCB marketing machinery talking about Link, but suppose I don't want to go with Link. Is the government going to have a basic wallet that I can just put on my phone, separate from apart from Link? Does that exist? I don't know who's going to answer that question.
Well, each commercial bank will have their way of allowing you to have access to CDBC. It may be through a wallet, and it doesn't have to be. It can be by way of card. But we would prefer that it is phone to phone and it is in a wallet that is most convenient to the customer. I don't know if we ever stop to think of all the challenges involved in cash. I mean, we are the creators of cash for Jamaica, but I want to tell you, it's very expensive. It carries a lot of responsibilities, and it's not just for us, but it is for the banks. Can you imagine what is involved in managing cash in the banks? And it is a source of a lot of frustration for small bank clients because in many instances, the reason that they actually go to the physical bank is because of cash. They either want cash or they're lodging cash. With CBDC, we work around that. We don't need to do that. So we can cut out all of that pain and heartache involved in going to a bank, having to line up and undergoing that experience, which especially of late has not been pleasant.
All right. So if I lose my well, let me go to that one. If there's no internet, Tesfa,
Yes.
I'm up in weight a bit,
Yes.
or doing one of my hikes way up in the Blue Mountains, which I do every weekend, and all of a sudden I look down. I know what you see. Is it nothing? Is it no?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And I get to a little jelly man. Uh, how, can I still pay?
Yeah. So the unfortunate thing, right, is that the thing that makes Jamdex good as a value proposition is also in some respects the downfall, right? It is designed to be online real time, allowing for commerce to take place with greater levels of efficiency. But of course, it is to be understood that it does rely on internet connectivity. We would have heard before that we've been working with our partners to at least allow the service to be delivered without you being at, coming out of pocket, being at cost. But at the same time, we at NCB have ensured that we've made our solution to be as robust as possibly, as possibly as it can be, as well as working with BOJ to optimize their base infrastructure to allow the solution to be online real time the vast majority of the time. I would say safe and except for catastrophe and national disaster. But even in such instances, we have already started talks with the BOJ to even make plans to de-risk some of those eventualities by moving our infrastructure to the cloud. Again, yes, it still does rely on connectivity, but we do believe that with a higher order infrastructure base, we should be able to mitigate most of the fallout associated with loss of technology service.
Talking about loss, I know that now, or I knew that I have cash in my wallet. If a note is damaged, I think I can take it to a central bank or take it to an institution and they replace it.
Yes.
Let's say I use your wallet or a wallet from a bank and I have sent this money to my jellyman and he says he doesn't get it.
Doesn't get it.
Who do I call? How do I find out?
Yes.
What happens there?
All right. So there would be a number of players in the value chain depending on the relationship. So if I'm going to keep it strictly, assuming it's a wallet provided by NCB.
Yes. Okay.
Right. Or rather link in partnership with some other merchant. The fact that CBDC is a digital instrument, it allows us to trace the communication of the currency object itself. Not to say John Doe and identifying personal details of the individual, but we would have records of the transaction and be able to tell whether or not it was successfully delivered to the intended recipient. In the event we're able to detect that something went wrong with that transaction, there are different avenues for redress. It could be that the money be refunded to the sender's wallet, or depending on the nature of the difficulty, we could simply forward on the currency object to the intended recipient as well. So there are avenues. Nothing gets lost or destroyed in this world. The paper equivalent is subject to physical damage. The CBDC Jamdex, however, is certainly a little bit more resilient. If I was to go a little bit further as well, because I believe you would have raised it in terms of losing your wallet. Um, that's, I would say, hardly a concern in the new world, because while you have the device on your person, the wallet information is in fact centrally stored and allows for recoverability and reinstatement of position. Now, of course, there's still some responsibility that one has in managing the device. John would have spoken about the security apparatus and processes that one would expect to implement for any secured medium. But generally speaking, digital currencies are inherently secure by nature.
Right. Richard, when the speakers earlier came on, they're talking about the risk. Um, one of the things they talk about was inclusion. How far will the central bank go to to get take up on this thing? Huh? What other avenues? As I said, I see the various social media push, media. How else are we going to get inclusion?
Yeah, well, most of the customers of CBDC are already customers of the various banks. And so it's up to the banks to recruit these people to CDBC. But there are, as you say, a bunch of people outside of the banks. And one of the major players is the telecoms, meaning that they are the rails on which a lot of these transactions are running. And to the extent that they have an interest in participating as a payment provider, then they can also, in fact, apply to Bank of Jamaica. So you'll have a lot of people who have phones and are therefore customers of the telecoms, but are not members of any banking institution. And so they can get recruited to the banking world via the telecoms. Uh, Eventually, they'll all become bank customers, but they get recruited by the telecoms. And we
Okay.
have been engaged in the telecoms because, as Tesfa says, they are an important link forgive the pun, important link in this digital world. And so we've been talking to them and working with them actively to make sure that as much redundancy and resilience exists for CBDC.
Yeah. Tesfa, Peter Wright is throwing words at both of us in the chat. Not sure if you're seeing, but one of the things he is talking to you about, of course, no discussion around this, around Jamdex comes without bringing up cryptocurrency. Peter Wright says, "Hey Tesfa, cryptocurrency is safer than digital currency." True. So I don't know how you respond to that.
So the typical response would be somewhat. The nature of cryptocurrencies, and particularly cryptocurrencies distributed on a blockchain, there's tremendous amount of redundancy built into and robustness built into distributed ledger systems. I would say more so than what would be a centralized ledger. That being said, I can tell you that the encryption algorithms built into the solution, originally procured by BOJ, is very robust. The algorithmic computations used to safeguard the currency tokens to ensure that the values are immutable after being committed is also very, very strong. So we believe that between the steps taken by the BOJ and certainly the position that NCB takes in securing all its technical assets, brings our level of assurance to a very high level. But of course, there is the human element that we as an organization would take great pains in ensuring that the users are appropriately sensitized and educated around the proper use of their wallet and the CBDC in general. But at a technology level, it's difficult to refute the claim.
Right. Tesfa, you had mentioned earlier about partnerships with other deposit-taking institutions, and so I had an example I wrote to myself. If First Global, for example,
Yes.
releases a digital wallet, could I use
Yes.
their wallet to send money to the NCB wallet, and
Yes.
vice versa? How does that work?
Right. All right. So a critical part of what makes CBDC work in any jurisdiction is having broad acceptance, and that is underpinned by what is you would consider to be interoperability. So the CBDC construct, JAMDEX, is designed to be interoperable across all the participants, all the financial participants on that designated network. And so it would be incumbent on all the players to follow the protocols for exchange to allow such movement of currency tokens to occur. So at this point in time, there's no single monopoly, right? Though NCB would have been the first, any other bank who decides to stand up their own wallet, subscribing to the protocols that have been defined by the BOJ, should be able to send funds to us at NCB through link or otherwise. In the same way, we would be able to send funds to them.
Yeah. So Governor Byles, earlier you mentioned about the unbanked, and what are the real benefits? I mean, the unbanked seem to be, I don't know, they seem to have their way of going through life, and it seems to be working for them. Why is there this interest around providing some sort of a way for the unbanked to benefit? And what are some of the benefits?
Well, a simple example is when we went through the pandemic and the Minister of Finance sent out those care package payments. Thousands of people didn't receive it. And even amongst those who did, they in a way eventually did. They didn't get it efficiently. It took time. So some of it is, lost. So just in terms of efficiency of making sure that if you want to pay someone, it will happen and it will happen instantaneously. Digital currencies way ahead. So it's a big enticement. You can stay here and pay people remotely. You can't do that with cash. Jamaicans, even though they're not a part of the banking system, many of them, they are very savvy on their phones, and every one of them have phones. As you know, in Jamaica, we have 1.5 phones per person. So technology is not new to them. It's not unfamiliar to them. And I think that they would like and gravitate towards this idea of a digital currency. But Chris, can I just say something quickly on cryptocurrency? So, everybody is aware of cryptocurrency, but CBDC is totally different in a sense. Yes, they both are digital, and in some instances, CBDCs run on distributed ledgers. But cryptocurrencies get, generally speaking, traded on some market, and so their value go up and down. For CBDC, that never happens. That same $100 note that you have in your hand today and may have in your hand next week, it's valued the same thing. Same with CBDC. If you have $100 on CBDC, it is worth $100 tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. It doesn't trade up or trade down. Right? So that's an important concern that I think we need to address.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
So therefore, then, Governor Byles, and maybe Tesfa, why, if the banks are going to be giving up fees, why do this?
Giving up fees?
Yes, because you said it's the same value. If I transfer it to one of my wine suppliers in Montego Bay, it's the same exact value. The bank don't get to take a little, a little
Let me tell Tesfa. Not that I have to tell Tesfa, but I like to tell Tesfa what gains he's going to make out of this.
Yes.
Tesfa knows better than I do how many hundreds of millions of dollars he spends on security of cash. He has to hold it, he has to count it, he has to swap it out with us. Then he has his customers. He has thousands of customers who have to do the same thing. By going digital, he is not only saving himself that cost at NCB, but all of NCB's customers who eventually use CBDC, they too will get those cash savings. So that's a very big reason why banks should and will like to distribute
Yes.
CBDC, and why businesses should be inclined towards it also.
Yeah. Okay. That's why you're about to say
I-
something. Yeah.
Yes, if I could add to that, so he's right. The efficiencies we gain by moving to a digital currency, I would say in some respects outweigh the cost that might be incurred in delivering the service. And to the extent that we would need to balance any cannibalization of fees, we'll find a way to innovate, to create new opportunities, pool of customer base. Because part of what you want is in catering to the unbanked is meeting their needs, right? So yes, we know it's going to be delivered for free, but what are the reasons for them to be unbanked in the first place or underbanked? And if you can deliver to them a service, the ability to do business freely, then their circumstances over time and the posture that they take might very well change. And as such, you have an opportunity now to transition someone from the state of being underbanked or unbanked into becoming a banking customer. And from there, you're able to continue to do your typical banking or financial life cycle activities. So we see the opportunities, notwithstanding the loss or potential loss in revenue, but it serves a broader agenda from the NCB context.
Richard, is there any age limit if I want to give each of my children? Well, let me ask Tesfa. Tesfa, is there an age limit with your link wallet, or is there an age limit to put on any sort of a wallet on my children's phones so that I can send money to them?
Um, at this point in time, I believe there's an expectation that you're 18 years. But to the extent that you are asked to provide a government issued ID as well as some photographic evidence as well, the constraints for having, let us say, a family member connected to your link account might be something we have in our roadmap to relax. But generally speaking, I understand that it might be 18 years old. I'm not sure if the governor has any regulatory constraints that dictate the age limits.
My understanding is the same as yours.
Okay.
All right. Okay, great. I don't know, Khalil will take up some of these questions, but a question that just popped in the chat a while ago, Carlton Lawrence. I am still not clear on the benefits of CBDC to the commercial banks. How will they make money from providing a platform and the accompanying services of a link, for instance? But that's why I think
Okay.
you answered it, but he
All
sounds
right.
like he's not convinced.
Yeah. So
I don't know.
yeah. So I have to be very careful in I don't want to give out the secret sauce, right? Because it is a global problem. In speaking to persons, even at the IMF, they would have highlighted the fact that in some jurisdiction it's a loss leader. What I see is a different angle. Most persons tend to look at the loss from the consumer transaction, right? However, when you think about e-commerce, digital business, you focus on the merchant service. There are small businesses who would like to take their business online, but they do not yet have the wherewithal to get that done. I think what was mentioned, you could probably have your online web front or storefront, right? Integrating your online web presence with, say, a credit card processing tool that we have now, for some entities might be too far out of their reach. However, we could introduce to them a e-commerce solution that is now based on CBDC Jamdex payment, which comes in at a lower price point. It still allows us as the bank to earn revenue, but it will be lower for the merchant to get in, right? Removing that high barrier and create a business opportunity for us.
Okay.
So we believe commercializing the rails more so than the actual transaction that takes place is the way to go. Is the way to go.
Fantastic.
That's as
Fantastic.
much as I believe I'll be able to
Governor
say.
Byles, any statement? Because I'm going to ask Kalila to jump in because I see about a dozen questions piling up in the chat area.
Well, well, Chris, I can't overemphasize the potential for this to save costs. Think of all the ABM machines out there, what it takes to run them, establish them, all of the teller services in the bank, enormous. The vaulting, the transportation of cash. I mean, it's billions. I know what we spend here at BOJ, and we count it in billions. And the banks would separately also, uh, I should say, collectively count it in billions also. And every business, the same thing. But I think very importantly too, the customer that is complaining today about bank service is largely a customer that is cash oriented, and they have to go to the physical bank, they have to line up, and they complain about the service. Every bank will provide better service with CBDC than they are provided with cash,
Agree.
guaranteed.
Thank you, Richard. When is CBC? I heard Kalila ask a question earlier. When are we going to pull the trigger? When is it going to happen? When am I going to send my $2,000 in my account or 2,500? Now my Tesfa, I don't know the wallet already, Easy like pie.
Yes. So right. So we're working very hard to meet the commitment of April, the end of April, as was mentioned by John Matthew in the previous session. So we're sticking to that, and hopefully we'll get there.
Kalila, over to you.
Thank you, Chris. Yes, people are anxiously awaiting the start of Jamdex, especially since the minister gonna promise free
Yes.
money, 2,500.
Indeed.
So people are
Indeed.
like, what am I
Indeed.
gonna
Indeed.
see it in my digital wallet? And then
Indeed.
me gonna announce big promotion, Jamdex promotion, that you get discount if you use Jamdex. And I said
Right.
to April
Right. Right.
15, but the date has been pushed back, and I have to explain that. But as Chris mentioned, there are many, many questions, more than a dozen now in the chat. So let's go over to them. I think some of them you might have answered in the presentation already. Matthew says, do you have any estimates on the percentage of unbanked in Jamaica or the wider Caribbean? Some estimates put it at 65%, but I'd like some more recent data if available.
Well, Khalil, I would say there's, as Tesfa mentioned before, the unbanked and the underbanked. What we find is that there are lots of people who have banking relationships, they don't use them. They have a savings account, and that account has been dormant for year after year. So there are tens, hundreds of thousands of people like that. And then there are hundreds of thousands who just don't have an account at all. So I mean, I would be guessing. We probably have a more precise numbers that I'm not aware of, but I would think that there would be easily 400,000 or 500,000 Jamaicans who should be in the banking system actively using it, and they are not.
Okay, not sure where we will be able to find that information. If anybody knows, put it in the chat. Where can we find that info on the unbanked? George asks, will the ordinary merchant like the coconut jellyman benefit from CBDC? I think you already answered that. The answer is yes, as long as the jellyman
Yep.
signs up for the digital wallet
Yes.
and is able to use Jamdex.
Correct. Yes.
Peter
Being able
Wright,
to receive payment immediately. Yes.
exactly. Peter I says, good afternoon, Dr. Byles. My daughter and all her friends are asking me why I am using a local centralized digital currency wallet, Jamdex, when they all are using so many international decentralized regulated cryptocurrency wallets available. She's about to do her CXCs, wow, and just did a project on DeFi. What should I tell her later? I told her I would see you today.
Well, Jamdex is Jamaican currency backed by the Bank of Jamaica, just like cash. So if you want something that is safe, secure, guaranteed, that is what Jamdex is. As I said before, if you are in the crypto world, some days are good for you, the price goes up. Some days are not so good for you, the price goes down. CBDC is always that same value that you went in, you exit at.
Well, dependent on the value of the Jamaican dollar. So the
Well, we're
Jamaican dollar
talking
does go
about
up and down, and CBDC is the Jamaican dollar. So when the
correct.
Jamaican dollar goes up and down, it moves along with that.
It goes Jamaican dollar goes up and down versus a foreign currency. But in Jamaica, $100 today is $100 next year.
$100. Correct.
It may buy less, but it
Yeah.
is still $100.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, understood. All right, Carlton. This question is for Tesfa. Carlton wants to know, how do I move money from my link account to my non-NCB account?
From your link account to your non-NCB account. Okay. So we would have spoken about the different channels that we are seeking to integrate with the wallet application. So outside of full banking interoperability, we would need to be made aware of some other commercial bank who is a part of the system. And once they become in existence, we will be able to have that transfer of CBDC over to their wallet. And presumably within that wallet ecosystem, they also have a mechanism to allow you to deposit the funds. But say that is not the case. Using our ABM or smart ABMs, you would be able to do a cash out from the link wallet into hard cash. And unfortunately, then you would be required to make your standard bank remittance over to your alternate banking partner. Additionally, we are moving into another phase within our roadmap where we're starting to think of the use cases. There are opportunities to do a transfer of CBDC straight from our internet banking platform as well, right? And leveraging existing rails. So there are some opportunities, some not yet fully built out, others that are largely dependent on the other financial institutions. But what we are able to do now is a half half technology, half manual basis using our ATMs.
Right. So I heard John Matthew explain earlier that if you don't have an NCB account, what you can do is link your Visa, MasterCard card from other banks. But if it's a
Yes.
credit card that you're linking, would you still be able, can you withdraw to your credit card? How does that work?
Withdrawing to your credit card, unless it's a prepaid, I don't believe you'll be able to do that.
But if it's a debit, then it would transfer.
Correct.
Okay. Carlton has, this is a good observation. He says, in situations where there is no network connectivity, can a QR code be created by the payer in the amount payable that is scanned by the payee, and then the transaction will be settled when connectivity becomes available?
Yes. So we're actually at the point where we'll be looking to design around offline processing. It is not yet something that is fully fleshed out, fully built out in the ecosystem, but it has been identified as a critical part of the go forward. Now, as for generating the QR codes, most of what the user would require to generate the QR code can actually be done offline. Absolutely. The algorithms are largely built out on the phone device itself and be able to process it. However, the transmission associated with the transaction is something that would likely be delayed.
A couple questions here that you guys have already answered. Carlton, was asking about the benefit for NCB and other commercial banks. You went over that in detail.
Yes.
Peter asking as well about security versus crypto versus digital currency. You discussed that as well. Richard wants to know, who does the customer go to address any problems with the system?
Yes. All right. So that's a very good question, actually. And it really boils down to the chosen wallet solution. Now, of course, I am speaking from an NCB representative. But generally speaking, that relationship will be dependent on who you're acquiring the wallet from. So in this case, a user of the Link wallet would engage the Link organization, right? Link, TFOB. Based on the discovery, whatever diagnosis and troubleshooting that is done at that level, they will make, based on the outcomes of those investigations, internal checks with us, running core systems to do further due diligence and assessment before being able to provide any remedy or response. So the idea is that the channel provider, whether it's the website provider, the mobile wallet provider, would be the first point of contact for the user of the wallet. And then depending on who is backing that wallet solution, whether it's NCB or some other financial institution, they should do the back channel communication to have that resolved. But the customer should never be put through the rudiments of having to ferret all the way down to the supporting bank to gain
Yeah,
support.
so just go to your wallet provider.
Precisely.
Peter, right? This is a question for Governor Byles. We kind of went over this a little bit just now, but let me ask it just for clarity. Peter says, what is the effect of inflation on the Jamdex CBDC? Will it too be affected by the same inflation of cash?
Yes. We haven't yet invented a currency that is inflation proof. So Jamdex will be just like cash. Whatever the fate of cash is with inflation, the same thing would happen with Jamdex. Kalila, can I just point out a small advantage of CBDC? You know, when you go to many places, they're fighting to get change, and sometimes they don't have the change, and so you have to walk away and leave your change, or they give you a sweet tea. Jamdex solves that. You can charge $97.38 and pay that precisely, and there's no problem with change. When you think of going to the toll, and the time it takes for them to take your money and give you change, and what they go through, they keep stacks of $100 bills and just to give you change. It's just tremendous, and Jamdex solves all of that. You just go up, show them your phone, transfer the money, whatever it is, and you're gone.
Right. So we're almost at the close of this session. I'm going to take one more question, maybe two. We'll see if we can squeeze it. But I also want the participants to take our poll. And the question is, do you need help in assessing your digital maturity? Yes or no? Just take the poll in the poll section. Do you need help in assessing your digital maturity? Next question comes from Chris Elliott. Will BOJ CBDC also allow US dollar transactions?
No. CBDC is strictly Jamaican money. And so I keep saying it's just like Jamaican cash. You can't pay someone abroad in CBDC, and you can't get a remittance straight to your telephone in CBDC. You have to go through the same process as you would with cash, from US dollars to Jamaican or from Jamaican to US dollars.
Peter Wright asks, Dr. Byles, it's not doctor, it's Mr. Byles, right?
Khalil, I don't know when you promoted me.
Governor Byles, where'd the question go? Deleted the question. All right, I'll come back to it if we can. But Heather wants to know, is it our aim to digitize persons out of jobs?
Certainly not. Not from the BOJ point of view. What we want is to make commerce easier, quicker, safer, and as costless as possible. That's what we are trying to do from a central bank point of view.
Okay, and I'll take one final one from Ricardo Brown, who says, be it true or not, will anyone willingly give away their freedom for the sake of faster transactions?
Their freedom. I'm not sure what freedom you're giving up.
Yes.
Khalil, I may want
Maybe
to
you
have a
can
travel
take that one.
question. I think it's connected to Trevor's question. Trevor, you want to ask that one? Two down below.
Trevor Forrest,
Yeah.
what are the innate citizen and data privacy concerns associated with the enhanced transaction monitoring capabilities of a CBDC environment? I've seen this question come up a lot. A lot of people are
Yes.
skeptical about CBDC because they
Yes.
say, oh, no, the government is doing this because they want to see everything that you're doing with your money. They want
Right.
control, they want access to your
I
data
think that was what
and
Rickard's
everything that you're
question was
doing.
connected to.
So address that one for me,
All right.
please,
So
Governor
if I could at
Tesfa.
least offer a preliminary response on this one. Yeah. So there's a tendency for persons to believe that yes, it allows for heightened monitoring and you're surrendering your own personal sovereignty and identity. The implementation that we have here safeguards the identity of those who use it to make transactions. So at a higher order regulatory standpoint, the BOJ does not know that Tesfa sent Kalila Jamdex, nor does it know that Tesfa has purchased X or Y item. All they have is a token and the associated value of the transaction. So your transaction details at the highest level is anonymized. Now, admittedly, there are controls put in place to mitigate and prevent fraud, which is why at point of onboarding, we do capture some basic information with respect to who you are. But that information is not being how would I say broadcasted to any monitoring agency of any sort. So person should feel comfortable knowing that the information provided to us is kept secure and confidential and is not subject now to some later how would I say probe.
Okay, I'm going to take the last two questions here and then we wrap up. We're over time, I should mention, but it's a very interesting discussion. Daisy says, if you transfer funds between currencies in your electronic wallet, what rate is utilized? Banks usually post their daily rates.
Tesfa, I don't know if you can answer that one. From BOJ's point of
Unfortunately,
view,
there was a slight interruption, so I didn't hear the question.
If you transfer funds between currencies in your electronic wallet, what rate is used? Banks usually post their daily rates.
Right. So, well, for CBDC, there is no exchange rate. So CBDC to CDBC is 1-to-1. So there's no loss or conversion in value. Now, if you're talking about CBDC to another, let us say US dollar or Canadian, to the point that was made, CBDC is equivalent to your Jamaican dollar now. So the exchange rate used for CBDC, if such a transaction was being executed, would be applicable, right? But CBDC to CBDC, there's no loss or change in value
Okay.
arriving from
And
conversion.
right. So if you eventually, when other currencies are added, like USD, Euro, whatever, then we'll be able to use whatever the going rate for the day is.
Correct.
So
The prevailing rate at that
final
time for the Jamaican dollar.
final question comes from Dominique McIntosh, who wants to know why use CBDC when there are more globally accepted forms such as Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc.
All right. So I'll give you my part of the answer, and I think what was mentioned before is the volatility, right? So if you think about cryptocurrencies, yes, it is big business. It is in fact used in commerce and trade and many things globally, but it does not serve the purpose that we would ascribe it to be at this point in time. And safeguarding the interest by offering the sovereign currency, I think would be a safer route. Not to say you wouldn't be able to also use crypto if you so choose. I mean that is not for me to say, but there is a place for CBDC, even as a
Well,
companion to your other crypto.
Absolutely. I want
instruments.
to thank you all for joining us. This was one of the most anticipated discussions of the day from morning. Everybody logged in. I asked
Right.
them, what do you want to hear about? And this was the
Wow.
topic. So it's been a
Luxury.
highlight for many people. Thank you for providing this information. Chris Reckord, Richard Byles, and Tesfa Rhodes.